everyone. I'm AJ Cortese, a research associate at MacroPolo, the Paulson Institute's think tank, and we've recently published a series on China's tech pivot from the era of consumer internet to what we kind of classify as core innovation, which includes fundamental technologies that impact the real economy with a focus on advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, biotechnology, energy, and infrastructure. For the better part of a decade, kind of spurred by the mass proliferation of mobile internet, China's consumer internet industry spawned these really titanic companies that went on to be household names. These companies include the likes of Alibaba, Tencent, but even newer upstarts like Meituan, Pinduoduo, ByteDance, and Didi Chuxing. Now, these companies pioneered a massive platform economy that was really the backbone of growth in Chinese technology for the best part of a decade. Beginning in late 2020, we started to notice a regulatory shift, which resulted in the campaign against internet companies that began in late 2020 and really wrapped up in late 2021. So this coincided with the government's desire for more tangible, fundamental innovation that is perhaps best summarized by the phrase, "We wanted 5-nanometer chips, but we got digital red envelopes." And so this shift towards core innovation really manifested in the investment activity of state-backed funds in 2021 and the sector distribution of IPOs on the Shanghai Star Market, as well as listed little giant companies. In those areas, we see a distinct preference for technology solutions that transform the real economy. Now, you might have heard of the acronym BAT to describe Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent, the consumer internet giants. But this next generation of Chinese technology is really going to be defined by companies like the CDB or CATL, DJI, and BYD. They are China's largest battery maker, drone company, and electric vehicle maker. And so this is kind of the shift that we're witnessing throughout the industry. It kind of has an impact not only for the companies and entrepreneurs in Chinese tech, but for policymakers in Beijing, as well as investors and corporates. So for decades, certain multinationals have been dominant in high-tech areas in China, in areas like performance materials, medical devices, obviously key points in the semiconductor supply chain. And increasingly, Chinese economic policymakers are really trying to push import substitution and really foment domestic alternatives to these foreign technologies. So we've already seen that in certain sectors like power chips and EVs and silicon carbide, to also places like image sensors that can be used in assisted autonomous driving. As foreign companies navigate a shifting Chinese economy that focuses on securing high-tech supply chains, they'll have to face sterner competition from domestic competitors and peers, the likes of which they haven't faced in 2 decades of rather tame competitive environment. In our Tech Pivot in Practice series, we really go into some of the key technology verticals where China is trying to advance the development of its own domestic technologies, where it previously had to rely on foreign alternatives. We go into how China is prioritizing the development of these key strategic technologies, like specifically silicon carbide power chips for electric vehicles and image sensors used in miniature cameras. In the case of silicon carbide, this is an incredibly important power chip to the green energy transition, and it has really high thermal conductivity, which allows it to be used in a range of areas and increase energy efficiency. The chief application area for these silicon carbide chips is actually in electric vehicles, where they can increase range, speed up charging time, and reduce the amount of overall copper needed in an electric vehicle. These properties make it key to the electric vehicle transition, and China is really trying to catch up in this area. Unlike leading-edge advanced logic chips, where China is a couple generations behind its Western competitors, silicon carbide power chips represent a more reasonably attainable opportunity for China to make serious strides in this technology. The way in which they've gone about their silicon carbide development has relied on a close relationship with state-run academic sectors. So a lot of the production that we'll see coming from China in silicon carbide in the next decade will come from state-supported production, where either IP or talent transferred from the state academic sector or research labs into private companies that then commercialize the large-scale production of silicon carbide. Now, this is incredibly important because China is the world's largest EV market, and so by developing these adjacent ecosystems of technology like silicon carbide power chips will only propel China's EV adoption further and its technology farther against Western peers. In another area of image sensors, Chinese companies have been really adroit in scaling lower-end technologies to enter and also acquiring companies with incredible strategic precision. I would specifically highlight the example of OmniVision, a California-based image sensor company that was acquired by a Chinese investment consortium in 2015. OmniVision has gone on to be one of the leaders in image sensor technology, with its tiny cameras found in everything from iPhones to the backup cameras and autonomous LiDAR systems that are in L2 and L3 plus autonomous driving throughout the auto industry. Chinese investors showed a shrewd ability to predict the evolving trend of technology where image sensors based on a CMOS architecture were prevailing over a previous CCD architecture, and managed to snap up the asset and integrate it into its own domestic semiconductor and image sensor ecosystem, and continue OmniVision as one of the leaders in the field. In these two examples of silicon carbide and image sensors, we see how Chinese companies are promoting domestic substitution through both acquisition but also self-developed technology coming out of the academic sector. In China's pursuit of core innovation, human capital and talent is going to be probably the most determining factor in its success. To make significant technological progress in these high-tech areas like semiconductors, like artificial intelligence, like material science, and a host of other areas, the quality of the talents that are in the companies, startups, and academic research institutions will really determine whether this tech pivot will actually come to fruition. And that's why when it comes to attracting talent and distributing the talent already in China, there are significant inefficiencies in terms of talent clustering in China's largest cities that doesn't filter down to many of the lower tier cities. And as a result, you have uneven economic growth and economic and technological agglomeration focused on China's wealthy areas and the coasts. For China to more efficiently distribute its human capital, it would take a serious reform of talent attraction policies across the country. So these are different policies where municipality governments or provincial governments will offer financial incentives to top talents with graduate degrees to come and settle and live in their city and work at a local company. These policies are unevenly distributed throughout Chinese municipalities. For example, people are equally incentivized to go to lower tier cities and China's large metropolitan areas. So if the attraction or the financial incentive to move to a smaller city like Wuxi is the same as going to a metropolis like Shanghai, you're inevitably going to see most of the top talent that is already in places like Shanghai and Beijing stay there and not filter out to the rest of the country. And so this uneven talent distribution is going to cause problems for a lot of companies involved in China's tech pivot. These companies can best be summed up in the Little Giants cohort, which are a government-designated group of companies that have innovative potential. And actually, a majority of these Little Giant companies lay outside the superstar cities, which means if the talent is not filtering down to the Little Giants throughout China, that will definitely stifle China's ability to promote core innovation and commercialize key technologies and breakthroughs and scale them, as we know, is their economic strength. More than half of the Little Giants are located outside China's wealthiest areas, and that talent concentration means they will have difficulty attracting the skilled labor needed to push niche innovations in high-tech verticals. A preliminary look at China's biotech and pharmaceutical industry shows how this talent imbalance shows up in firm performance. Adding to the talent challenge for Chinese core innovation companies, they're facing a dearth in really premium graduate-level talent. So as hiring data from the Little Giants cohort shows, less than 1% of Little Giant hires actually held doctorate degrees, and only under 4% had graduate qualifications at all. For the STEM PhDs in China's technology industry, they show a strong preference for the academic sector rather than the innovative cauldron of the private sector. For the next generation of companies that are supposed to be promoting core innovation in China, the lack of really high quality talent will be one of the main obstacles they need to overcome. Some other technologies and topics that we'll cover in the Tech Pivot in Practice series going forward are going to include virtual reality and augmented reality hardware, artificial intelligence and industrial applications of AI, as well as other key choke points across the semiconductor supply chain, including different chip verticals like memory chips and other high-tech areas like medical devices. So we hope that you stay tuned for the publication of those pieces, and we look forward to bringing more research on China's tech pivot to you.